Welcome to the gallery overlooking the beautiful House Chamber. I'm Sarah Allen. It seems hard to believe, but we are near the end of the first year of the biennium. This session, 44 new members came to the Capitol with their commitment to champion issues their constituents care about. Before session began, we had the opportunity to talk to most of these new members in our new member interviews about what they're hoping to accomplish this legislative session. Today we are revisiting two of those new members, Representative Peter Fisher from Maplewood and Representative Mark Uglum from Champlin. Thank you both for joining us, especially when it's so close to the end of the session.
Yes, thank you very much for interviewing us this morning. It's a pleasure to come in, and of course we've been here since 5:30 a.m. this morning, but it's all good.
Are you ready to go?
We're ready to go. We've got the energy.
That's great. Did you have some caffeine though?
Yes, a little bit.
Not yet. I'll wait till later.
Well, Representative Fisher, let's start with you. What was your biggest surprise this session?
I think the biggest surprise I had is how big of an issue water is around here. With White Bear Lake in my district, it's lost 25% of its volume in the last 10 years from pumping from the aquifer, and didn't realize how complex and complicated that issue was and how many side things that were tied into it. And as a result, it ended up being a lot more work, and then learning how to do things toward the end of session to try to get some things set up for over between sessions and teeing us up for things that we need to work on the water issues for next year. So I learned how complex a simple issue can be and how the process changes to get things done as you get later in session.
Representative Uglum, what do you wish you would have known before you started at the House of Representatives?
Well, really, I guess there haven't been too many big surprises. The committee process, the running through the committees have been, and Peter and I are on a couple of committees together, has been very good. Some of the floor stuff, well, for instance, this morning we come in at 5:30 a.m. and one bill took about 5 minutes, and then we're in recess. So it's a little chaotic as far as that goes. And my background is business, and some of the scheduling for the floor and everything else, it just wouldn't work in the private sector.
No, I imagine not.
Yeah.
You mentioned you both serve on the Labor, Workplace, and Regulated Industries Committee and the Environment and Natural Resources Policy Committee. Representative Fisher, can you explain what your working relationship is like with Representative Uglum and with some of the other Republican representatives on those committees?
I think very good. I know that being on the environment with Mark here, we've done a lot of work on different issues. As a matter of fact, one of them is on water. We were talking a lot at one point on water conservation pricing, and Mark and I had a lot of great discussions on it, and he helped me through the process as we worked at it. And it was one of the things, because we realized it was so complicated, this is one of the issues that we're going to be working on in between sessions. Mark and I had talked a few times, realized that there's some concerns from outstate people, couldn't get them addressed in the time we had. So I ended up dropping that part of my bill and changing a little bit along the lines. And Mark is one of those that said, I'd be happy to work with you over the summer because this is very important. And that's one of the things I've really appreciated. And there have been a lot more times like that happens. Jim Abler, he's with me on Health and Human Services. We've done a lot of working together on autism, some of those type of areas. And that's what I like about that opportunity, is to work on a lot of the other issues that are very important for the entire state. And there's a lot of bipartisan interest, because a lot of the interests we have are not much on, as much on party divisions sometimes as urban versus rural.
Yep.
And that is a very more challenging one, and one we have to be a lot more sensitive, so that we're making sure we're getting everybody's concerns addressed without unintended consequences in one area or the other.
Well, Representative Uglum, you also care about working in a bipartisan fashion. I know during our new member interviews you said that was one of your priorities, was to avoid gridlock. Can you talk about any legislation that you worked on that reached across party lines?
Well, some of the environmental policy stuff, our committee, and Peter's hit it on the head here about these water issues. He's very passionate about it, and he's exactly right. But our Committee on Environmental Policy has worked in a bipartisan manner to address the water issues, the invasive species issues, some of the lands issues and things up in northern Minnesota. Representative David Dill, who is a Democrat, has been just a wonderful, wonderful committee chair, and everybody on the committee gets along very well, and we get a lot of work done, a lot of important work done. So, I've made a real effort to reach across the aisle, and I'm always over on the other side of the House floor here talking to the guys and things, and we all have, a lot of common interests, and I really believe that the only way you get things done is to build relationships and work together. That being said, the regrettable part of some of this is we get into some of the hardcore issues, and there's just no change in any minds. That's the way it's going to be, and that's regrettable, but that's politics. Yeah.
Well, talking about some of those really difficult issues, was there ever a vote that you had to take, Representative Uglum, that you just agonized about, not knowing what to do? And can you talk to us about what that process was like?
Well, there's plenty of votes you agonize about here, and the reality is our caucuses have their positions. You do want to support your caucus when you can, but sometimes you have to look at it and say, hey, my constituents are the ones here that really elected me. I have, for instance, an item in the bonding bill, and I guess it's no secret the Republican Party really, this is not a bonding year, and the party doesn't want to have a bonding bill. But I have $2 million in there for a dam in the city of Champlin, our Mill Pond Dam, which needs to be rebuilt. It's a 1930s WPA, Works Progress Administration dam. So, I'm one of the few Republicans that has signed on to the idea of a bonding bill, even though I do feel it's a little excessive this year. But I need my city and my constituents really need this dam. So, I'm in for that.
Representative Fisher, are there any instances where you did not vote your conscience, but voted instead on behalf of what your constituents or what the state as a whole wanted?
With the district that I have, I really haven't had that many. Probably the biggest thing that has been the most contentious of the issue was the marriage equality one, and for my district, it was overwhelmingly in support of marriage equality, and that's what I was hearing a lot. And that's just an example of many of the issues that I've had, is that when I've heard from people, they've been very much mentioning and supporting positions that was lining up with where my interests were, or where thoughts were on it, and also where the party caucus was a lot of times. And there were some times where that when we were working on things, if that wasn't the case, I'd be working out, particularly in committee work. You see a lot of crossing over in committee work and supporting different things back and forth. And I think that's what happens on a lot of our bills, is a lot of work and a lot of input comes in from both sides, making great bills going forward. Even though you may not always see it in the votes on the floor, a lot of times in the Health and Human Services Committee, when we came back up with our final bill, most of the amendments that were being offered by the Republicans were very good amendments, and some things that we had not thought about, and we included those as part of the process going forward. And I think that's what helps a lot of it going forward, is realizing that we've had some very good, thoughtful work on these bills. It may not be the perfect thing that makes everybody happy, and in some ways, you don't get everything you want when you come to the Capitol. And sometimes I think that's the best form of government, is where everyone's not getting what they're looking for. And that hasn't happened on my side. I know there's things that we've not always won on, but at the same time, I realize that's what we need to do. We need to work together, and everyone needs to have some wins and losses to go forward.
Well, one of those bills that you both agree on was House File 821, and that provided funding for voluntary full-day kindergarten. And Representative Fisher, why was it important for you to sponsor that bill?
Why it's very important is because I can see the difference that it makes. The school district I'm in does provide for all-day kindergarten, had been funding it all the way along. And the school that my kids attended down the street had all day. And where I saw it make a big difference wasn't necessarily as much for the kids in the middle class as it was for those that were coming from families that had been under economic stress. I work in an area where I work with homeless youth on a regular basis, and a lot of times they haven't had the same foundation growing up as that I had or my kids had. And what I find with all-day kindergarten, that helps start overcoming some of those problems that the people at a disadvantage have. And when I've talked to people, that's one of the big reasons people can see the wisdom of it, because it helps those who just haven't been fortunate enough to be born in an environment where they've got the same strong supports that the rest of us have. And that goes to that heart and gets them up to the same speed that the rest of the kids are. It's just, and seeing how it works in the all-day kindergarten, I've just been so impressed with the efforts my school district has put into it. I know that many others have done it the same way. That's why I signed on.
Yeah. And what about you, Representative Eaglin? Why did you sign on and want to support that bill?
Well, because Peter did. No. No, actually, I'll tell you. I mean, I believe in education, and I think that this country needs to educate our children in the best possible manner. We're in a global economy, and we can lose. Okay, we can lose in terms of our youth, our education, and our ability to compete with China and other countries. It's demonstrated that all-day kindergarten gives these kids a head start in education. And you're right. I mean, whether it be disadvantaged children or whether it be children from the middle class, it's good for everybody. It really is. The key to the bill, in my respect, was it's voluntary all-day kindergarten, because some school districts may not be able to, they may not just have the physical facilities or whatever, but hopefully they'll work towards that. And it's expensive. It's expensive, and there's we need, from the funding source stand of things, that's difficult. But it's a good investment. That's the way I look at it. It's a good investment for the future for our kids.
We'll have two more questions, each about your district specifically. Representative Uglum, I know something that you care greatly about is Highway 610 and
Yes.
completing that project for your district. Can you tell us where we are with that?
Well, actually, again, in a bipartisan manner, Representative Nelson from Brooklyn Center and myself testified before the Transportation Committee, and we did get 610 moved a little further up the queue, if you will, and it is in the Surface Transportation Improvement Plan now for MnDOT. It's a critical artery for the North Metro area. I don't know if you've been up that way, but Target is building a huge campus. Some people say that it could, when it's done, it could be even bigger than 3M's campus. Yeah.
Wow.
In Maplewood.
Yes, I
3M
I know
campus
that.
in Maplewood. But it's critical, so we're moving forward on that, and we're one step closer. I think that very soon we will see 610 being completed. It's really clear that every year you wait, it costs more money.
Is there any funding for it in the bonding bill this session?
No, it's not, and there's no funding yet. It's such a big project. It's over $100 million that the boys have to save up a little money first. Yeah, but from an economic development standpoint, for the Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, Champlin, and even across the river, Anoka and Coon Rapids, which I also represent, it's an important key piece. And I guess the one real big deal about it is it's the last segment of freeway in the metro area that's never been completed. And it's been on the books since the late 1960s. So it's time.
And Representative Fisher, one of the issues that you care about, that you talked to us about during your new member interview, was education and wanting to make sure that those looking for a job would get the right education to be attractive for employers. Did you sponsor or work on any legislation, or will be putting forth any legislation that deals with that specifically?
Was not able to do a lot in that area just because of how the complexity of the water issues around White Bear Lake. Most of the bills I ended up introducing were bills revolving around the water issues, addressing with funding in those kind of areas, and learning the complexities of the issues. That took a lot of time. Having said that, there's some things that I worked with some of my fellow representatives on who took care of putting in the bills. And a big part of that, I think, was when we talked about education is on the higher education side, is we've got the proposal in that would increase funding to higher ed so that we'd be able to have flat tuition increases. That goes a long way in helping try to make education affordable, because for people to be successful, to be able to get those jobs, they need to be able to have that education, and if they can't afford it or come out with such large debt, that puts them behind the 8 ball. And those are the things that was very supportive, talking to members of my caucus to be able to advocate for that. So while I could not have the time to sponsor the legislation, those are the things I was able to work with others in the caucus, and when the issues came up, we were able to advocate for and make those type of things happen.
Are there any bills both of you will be co-sponsoring again this session?
Yeah, the water issues, Peter is right. I mean, he's from Maplewood and White Bear Lake. It's going to be a lot of props getting beat up on the lake this summer for people water skiing and all that. But there are water issues all over the Midwest and all over Minnesota. It's something that's completely foreign to us because we're the land of 10,000 lakes.
That's right.
But there are issues, and my part of that is we really do need to look at this and study it and inventory it, if you will. But we need to do it in a cost-responsible manner, and I don't like creating more bureaucracy to do that. We have the DNR, we have people that are expert in that in the state. I guess we just need to turn up the heat, place the emphasis on it, because it really does deserve emphasis, and work together on that. But there's so many environmental things, the invasive species, the Asian carp. I have a bill that I just dropped yesterday for the city of Anoka, and they have a dam, and that dam could be rebuilt, and it could protect Mille Lacs Lake, because it backs up the Rum River. It could protect Mille Lacs Lake from the invasive species Asian carp. So there's a lot of things that we can look at in the coming session, and obviously the economy. The economy's doing well, and for many policies that were put in place 6 months or a year ago, these things are coming to fruition now. But it's still fragile, and we have to be careful, and we need to, promote jobs and promote industry and make Minnesota a good place to work.
And before we wrap up, Representative Fisher, is there any advice you'd give to an incoming freshman?
For a new member coming in, some of the advice I would have is that to build relationships with people on the other side, and to be very open that when you've got a bill going through and people are coming up with ideas, be open enough and secure enough to be able to incorporate those in. I know that some of the bills I had come through late in session, we did that in the Environmental Committee. I know that Mark had some recommendations on the one bill that we had and some other things, and take those in to help make the bill better as we go through. And that's one of the things I've learned is that as you work together with people, you can find a better way to make your bill better, to better benefit the state. And I think that's the key thing to give as advice to people coming into here.
Well, thank you so much both for being here with us. We're looking forward to talking to you more next session, and good luck with these last few days.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
Nice to talk
Sarah.
to you.
Nice talking to you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.